Let's cultivate our motivation. So one line in the Manjushri prayer that always kind of gets to me is the line that says, confused in the darkness of their ignorance. We're talking about sentient beings and how we indeed are confused in the darkness of our ignorance. But what's so strange, especially about human beings, is we pride ourselves on being so intelligent, so smarter than animals, and the thought of some religions that all the animals were made here for our use because we're superior. And that kind of attitude, whether as a species or as one individual, when we hold ourselves as being so smart in whatever way we want to be smart, that attitude of arrogance actually becomes a huge hindrance on the path. Because if you think you already know so much and understand so much, then you think you don't have to learn much, and there's nothing anybody else can teach you. And, when we have that attitude, then we just turn away from all the sources of knowledge, all the sources of help, due to that kind of pride. So it's important, especially when we're talking about the ultimate nature, which is difficult to understand, that we come in with an open mind that isn't all cluttered with either our own philosophy, our own, pride, our own smugness about how much we know, and instead come in with an attitude of humility that is willing to learn and listen and challenge our beliefs. So it's quite important in Dharma practice to challenge our beliefs, whatever they are, because some of them are really off the wall. And if we think they're correct and we don't examine them, then we are self-sabotaging and keeping ourselves in the prison of samsara. Okay, so let's cultivate that kind of humility and also cultivate compassion for all the sentient beings who don't have access to these teachings, and those who think that they are already so smart and so wise, and thus cut themselves off from learning. And with that kind of compassion, then let's generate bodhicitta, aspiring for full awakening for the benefit of each and every sentient being. So, I'll read from some of the book and also comment. But just as a little bit of background, we're going to be talking about direct perceivers and also conceptual consciousnesses. Yeah. So direct perceivers are, for example, our 5 sense consciousnesses: seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, tactile. And they're called direct perceivers because these perceive their own object directly without the filter of a conceptual appearance. Yeah. Our mental consciousness can have direct perceivers, such as the direct perceiver, that's the union of serenity and insight focused on emptiness. But usually our mental consciousness is conceptual, because we're always thinking. Yeah. Whenever we're thinking, whenever there's language involved, we're saying words to ourselves or describing things to ourselves, or consciously saying this and that, and so on, then these are conceptual consciousnesses. Yeah. They don't perceive their object directly because they're perceiving a conceptual appearance of their object. Okay? So the difference is, look around the room, focus on something that you see. Okay? Then close your eyes and visualize it or remember it. Okay, open your eyes again and look at the object. Is it different seeing it with your eyes and visualizing it? It's very different, isn't it? Yeah. But you can visualize it. Yeah, that's the conceptual consciousness. And what is appearing to your mind is a conceptual appearance of whatever that object is. Okay? That's called the appearing object to that mind. The actual object you're apprehending would be whatever it was you're visualizing, okay? Or remembering, because a remembering consciousness, they're all conceptual, yeah? The object is not right in front of you at that time. Mm-hmm. So both direct perceivers and conceptual consciousnesses have advantages, yeah? And it's important to know those and to know what place they play in our Dharma practice, okay? So especially whenever we're hearing teachings, we're thinking about the teachings, we're reciting, different recitations, we're discussing the teachings, we're doing Lama meditation where we have an outline and we're thinking about different points in relation to our life. All of this, these are all conceptual consciousnesses, okay? So you can see that they play a big part in our Dharma practice, okay? That we can't just walk in to the Dharma totally blank and say, okay, I want to perceive emptiness, or I want to perceive subtle impermanence. And whammo, our mental consciousness has this direct perceiver, and those objects appear. Yeah. Would we even know what subtle impermanence looks like if it appeared? What is subtle impermanence, Does it have a sign that says subtle impermanence? Yeah. Or is it that there's different objects and you're watching them change moment by moment, and so you infer subtle impermanence? It's hard to figure out what that would actually look like. But, we have to start with the conceptual mind. Yeah, the direct perceiver, seeing something directly, is superior, but to get to many of those, we have to start with the conceptual mind. Okay? If, when you, somebody says, let's go to Spokane, yeah, and they start saying, okay, you go down Country Lane and you turn right at Spring Valley and you take that around, and then when it kind of ends, you make another right and then a sharp left, and you're getting an idea, a map in your mind of how to get to Spokane. Okay? So that's a conceptual consciousness. That is very useful, so that when you get in the car, if you remember the instructions, you can find your way. Yeah. And that's very different than what you see as you're actually traveling, and you see the trees and the plants and the burnt forest and everything else, okay? And that's with your eye consciousness, yeah? While you're driving there, you may hear the motor of your car, that's auditory consciousness, yeah? Maybe there's, you have your dog in the car and he hasn't had a bath for a while, that's your olfactory consciousness. And then you're chewing on, a snack, so gustatory consciousness. And then you feel, the temperature of the air and the seat below you, that's your tactile consciousness. Okay, so those can all be operating, but at that time, you want to be focusing on where you're going. Yeah, so especially visual direct perceivers, but also the conceptual appearance of the route that you're going to take, so that you don't go down down Country Lane and keep going straight. You'll bump into some more trees on the other side of the road. Yeah, so you have to keep things in mind. Okay, so this chapter is going to talk about how we come to have a direct perceiver of emptiness. The direct perceiver of emptiness is the one that actually can cut the root of our samsara, okay? Cut our afflictions from their root, yeah? So that's the one we want. We need to get it first via a conceptual consciousness. There's different levels of conceptual consciousness, okay? There's, so I just kind of told you a little bit about how to get to Spokane, the first few turns, okay? You kind of get it, right? Yeah, but I didn't give you the names of all the streets, and I didn't tell you how far from one turn till the next turn, and so on. So that's, you kind of have, some kind of assumption about what the road is like. Yeah, but it's not real good. Yeah. If I showed you a map, or if Siri showed you a map, yeah, or Cortana showed you a map, then you would look at it and it's like, oh, now you can see the distance between the turns, you can see the names of the streets you turn on. That one's much more precise. Okay, so with conceptual consciousnesses, there's a whole range of how well or how well we understand something that way. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at what the chapter says here. Okay, so this is what is Holiness's voice. Practitioners gradually pass through several stages of knowledge while progressing from ignorance to the correct realization of emptiness. So we start out with ignorance. Now here's where we confront our pride. Ignorance? I'm not ignorant. Look, I graduated from high school. I graduated from this. I'm not ignorant. But what we're talking about here is another kind of ignorance. Yeah, we're talking about the kind of ignorance that doesn't know the ultimate nature, how things actually exist. Yeah. And in fact, we're not only ignorant, meaning obscured regarding the ultimate nature, but we actively believe the opposite of how things actually exist. And the opposite of how things actually exist also appears to our sense consciousnesses. Yeah. So all day long, things are appearing like they have their own inherent nature, independent of anything else, and they appear that way. Yeah, and we don't question it. And in fact, when we look at our life and how we speak, how we refer to things, we're all the time, not just as inherent or a true existence appearing to us, but we're accepting it. And we're really saying, yes, things exist this way. Okay? So some examples of it. When somebody says, could you step in for me on after lunch dishes today? And you go, why are you asking me? You don't even have to say the next sentence, which we all know what it's going to be, Why are you asking me? You always pick on me. I do the dishes more than everybody else. You don't need to even get that far. Just that, why are you asking me? Okay. That, when we say the word me, there's the idea that there's a real person here. Yeah, there's a real person. They are asking me. I am a real person. And I just exist here. I don't feel like I exist due to causes and conditions. Yeah? I don't depend on causes and conditions. I'm just here. Okay, yes, when I was a baby, there were causes and I grew, but there's something that's really me, that was in me from the moment I was conceived. Actually, even before the moment I was conceived, because I came from a previous life. So there's a real me that, goes from one life to the next. And you're asking this real me to do the dishes. You are asking me. Yeah. So when you are seeing you at the other person, you're seeing them also similarly, the same way as similarly. Huh? Similarly. Yeah, it sounds like too many syllables. But anyway, okay. We're similarly seeing ourselves, did I say it right? Kind of. Okay. As, you, the you who's asking me, you are, this truly an existent person out there that's always been you, and there's something that's really you there. Yeah. Yeah, and plus, you think you're a big shot, yeah, and can boss me around. Huh. Yeah, Don't you know who I am? Yeah, do you know who you are? Yes, I'm Tibetan Chodron. Who in the world is Tibetan Chodron? When you say your name, who in the world is that person? This. So you're your t-shirt. You're pointing to your t-shirt. Yeah? Yeah. Oh, he has a new brand. Yeah. The Selden t-shirts. Made, especially for when you meditate on emptiness. Okay. Yeah. And then you say, no, I'm not referring to my t-shirt. I'm referring to my chest. Well, there's skin and there's bones. Yeah. Is your skin you? Are your bones you? What about deeper inside the skin and bones? Yeah, your heart. Thump, 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 thump. Yeah. Is that you? Is your heart you? So when you die, if they, harvest your organs and take your heart out, then you are going to be in another person. Yeah, but the other person has a brain. Is the brain belong to the other person? Or now is the heart you? Because they have a heart. They have their old brain, but they have your heart. So are they you or are they him? Okay. So, when we start to ask this question, what does our name really refer to? We can't pinpoint anything. Yeah. And yet, there is this feeling that there is a me there. No doubt about it. Yeah. Okay. So the way that person appears, that we have no doubt about, that's inherent existence. It exists independent of causes and conditions, independent of parts, independent of our even giving it a name, whatever your name is. Yeah? Okay. So, we pass through several stages of knowledge. We start out with ignorance, yeah, where so things exist dependently, yeah, and because they're dependent on other things, they are empty of having their own self-nature. Yeah? But we think they have a self-nature and that they do inherently exist. Okay, so the ignorance not only obscures us from seeing their emptiness, but the ignorance actually conceives of things as existing in the opposite way from how they do. Okay, and we don't even realize this. We don't even realize it because we've been doing it since beginningless time. And we've never questioned how things appear to us. Okay, so we begin with wrong awarenesses. So that's ignorance. It's totally wrong. It's erroneous. Yeah. We progress from there to doubt, inclined towards the right conclusion. So doubt is progress because it used to be a wrong view. Now we're kind of going, well, maybe, okay. So that's progress. Then we go from there to an assumption. Yeah. So there we have a correct, somewhat correct understanding, but it's still not very clear. Yeah. And from there, then we go to an inferential understanding. And that's brought about through using reasoning. Yeah. And so this is why in this volume and the future volume, especially the next volume, the profound, seeking the profound view, or realizing the profound view. There we're really going into all these logical arguments, yeah? And the thing is, when you can use a logical argument to prove something to yourself, it may still be a conceptual consciousness, but it's a good one, yeah, because it's used reasoning and logic, and something that has that correct conceptual it's called an inferential mind, then other people can't shake it, yeah. When we still have an assumption, somebody else can come in and give us other arguments, yeah. And that's why when we're going through this, we often study the arguments of non-Buddhists and of the lower Buddhist tenet schools, because we have to really refine our understanding of emptiness so that it's at least conceptually correct, okay? So the inference is when we have it, it's quite they say it's quite a strong thing. It's not just, yes, I understand the logical argument. Yes, I understand 1 + 1 = 2. That's not what we're talking about. But it's something that it really breaks through your ignorance somewhat. And whoa, gee, the way I thought things exist isn't the way they exist. Then from there, you go, as you keep meditating, you go to a direct perceiver of emptiness. And so this is through a mental consciousness, yeah, that knows emptiness directly. What does emptiness look like? Well, it's not pink, and it's, not tall, and it's not, doesn't make sound, and it's not just empty space. Yeah? Empty space is the absence of obstructability and tangibility. Emptiness is the absence of inherent existence. So it resembles space in the way that they're both the absence of something. But, empty space, easier, yeah. There's the emptiness of tangibility. I know what that is, and I can, the emptiness of that. It gives me the ability to move my hand, yeah. Whereas, when we talk about the emptiness of inherent existence, that's completely different. And we have to have, prior to that, some idea of what inherent existence would be like if it actually existed. Yeah? So this is the trick, and things do not exist inherently, but we think they do. They appear to our sense consciousnesses as if they do, yeah, but they don't. But that doesn't matter. We still believe that they do anyway. Okay? So this is an example of a wrong consciousness, yeah? And we have lots of wrong consciousnesses, yeah, lots of them. This one is especially important because this wrong consciousness of the ignorance of self, grasping true existence is the source of our samsara, yeah. But we have lots of other ones too, like climate change is a hoax. Okay, that's a wrong consciousness. And you can use data and, draw a correct inference that climate change is real. Okay? But you can also concoct your own beliefs and think that they're true too. Yeah? There's many things that we concoct our own beliefs and believe them. Like, I'm the best person around. Or, I'm the worst person around. And we go back and forth. But when we're in the middle of that, we believe that. You know, oh, I'm such a good person. I'm such a smart person. They should treat me better. Yeah? Yeah, shouldn't they? Don't you agree? Everybody should treat you better. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Yeah, you have a logical argument to support it, to make it a valid inferential realization. What if you make a syllogism? I is the subject. Yeah. Should be treated better, is what we're trying to prove, the predicate, because, what's the reason? Yeah, because I'm me. Okay, now, is that a valid reason why you should be treated better than people are treating you? Yeah. It's not really valid, is it? But we certainly believe it is. Don't we? We should be treated better, and everybody should know that. Right? Of course. And that thought, you know, it's an erroneous thought, it's a conceptual consciousness, it's wrong, but that doesn't matter, we believe it anyway. And what effect does believing in that wrong syllogism, what effect, or having that wrong conceptual consciousness, what effect does it have on your life? Yeah, what kind of suffering, what kind of conflict?
False expectations. False expectations.
False expectations of?
How people should treat me.
How people should treat me. Yeah.
Imputing other people's motivations. They're simply not doing what I need them to do.
Yeah, we impute other people's motivations. Yeah. They should see the reality that I'm so wonderful, but they are blind. Yeah. They aren't paying attention. Yeah. And then it causes conflict, doesn't it? You know? Hey, I'm doing so much and nobody appreciates me. You should appreciate me. And then we have a whole series, you know. You should appreciate me because I vacuum the floor more than anybody else in this place. And we even made a syllogism. Yeah, I as the subject vacuum the floor more than anybody else. No, I should be appreciated. That's the predicate, because I vacuum the floor more than anybody else. So it's true that I vacuum the floor more than anybody else, right? Okay, you mean there's some dispute about that? Oh, so I have to prove to you that I vacuum the floor more than everybody else. Well, I will prove it to you. I will go and get the chore list and, you know, check off every time I vacuum. And we'll see who else around this place does that. Okay, so let's say I prove that to you. I vacuum more than anybody else. So, is there pervasion that anybody who vacuums more than anybody else must, by necessity, be appreciated more? Are you sure When Joe Blow says that, he's talking to the wind. But when I say that, yes. Yeah, that's a good reason for me. But it's not a good reason for Joe if he says that he vacuums more than anybody else. But pervasion is, anybody who vacuums more than anybody else must be appreciated more. So there's no pervasion. Oh dear. Nobody loves me. Yeah. Okay. So I better think of another reason. And then we think of another reason. Yeah?
What's being appreciated more?
What do you mean?
Venerable, what does it mean to be appreciated more? Like that's my, question. It just seems like an unreasonable expectation, because if you need to be appreciated more, where does that end? What's the actual expectation?
Oh, it doesn't end. The whole universe appreciates me. No, but that's a very good question, Appreciated more, yeah. What is the demarcation of being appreciated enough where there's no more that you could be appreciated? Yeah. That's difficult to find too, isn't it? Yeah. But that doesn't matter. They still should appreciate me more. But however much people appreciate me, it's never enough. So I suffer, because of my incorrect inference. Yeah, that's something to think about, Look and see what your reason is for why you should be appreciated more. We all have reasons. Yeah. Why? Why should people appreciate you more? No, not you, him. This guy that's looking so innocent.
I pet mudita more.
Oh. No, you don't pet mudita more. See? You don't pet mudita. She pets mudita more, but you don't. Why did you say you did when you don't? Uh-oh. Uh-oh, can we trust anything he says? Next thing he's going to say is, what's your reason?
But I had mudita better.
He pets mudita. Mudita is the cat, okay, that goes into his office. So now you pet mudita better. Yeah, what does better mean?
More care and appreciation.
Than who or what? Oh.
Well, Venerable Becky takes her to her hammock and lets her sit down on the
Yeah.
better than anything.
Yeah, you take her out to your hand.
I took her
Oh. Wow, so not only on your lap here, but in the hammock. Oh boy, one spoiled cat. Okay. You gotta do more. Yeah. Okay. So these examples sound silly, but they show us how these arguments work or how they don't work. Yeah. So, and if you learn this with the Tibetans, the usual syllogism is sound is impermanent because it's a product of causes. And you hear that over and over and over again. You can recite it in your sleep. But, that may or may not be so interesting to us. In ancient India, that argument was very interesting because the Brahmins believed that the sound of the Vedas was permanent. But how can sound be permanent? If it were permanent, it would never end. It would always be the same, and it would never end. If it were permanent, it couldn't come into existence, and it also, if it existed, couldn't go out of existence. Okay, so that's an argument, that the little monklets learn. First argument. But, we can take out our arguments, and really check them and see if they make sense, because so much of what we think is just nonsense. Okay, so we ordinary people have a wrong awareness that grasps both persons and other phenomena to exist inherently. This is the opposite of how they actually exist. This erroneous mind doesn't disappear by itself. The first step to removing it is to listen to correct teachings on emptiness. Okay? But again, correct teachings on emptiness can't be given to just anybody, because people can misunderstand them. So it has to be given to people who have some background, Contemplating these teachings arouses doubt, hopefully. Doubt inclined to the wrong conclusion rejects emptiness, but if we continue to study and reflect on emptiness, it will gradually give way to doubt that thinks phenomena may or may not be empty, so kind of doubt in the middle. And if we, after more study and reflection, doubt inclined to the right conclusion thinks, I'm not sure, but phenomena lacking inherent existence makes sense. Okay? So you're not sure, but you think. So that's doubt inclined towards the positive. That's definitely a step up from ignorance. Continuing to learn and discuss, you reach a correct assumption that phenomena lack inherent existence. Okay, so notice it says correct assumption. We have a lot of assumptions that are not correct. But this one's a correct one. Okay, although you are now going in the right direction, your understanding is shallow, and the reason proving emptiness is not adequately clear to your mind. You know the words to explain emptiness, and intellectually you may believe that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence because they arise dependently. But it doesn't impact your mind very much. So that's the stage of, everything is empty because it is a dependent arising. We say that all the time, don't we? It sounds good. Do I really understand what it means? No. But that doesn't matter. I can still say it and sound good. And then people appreciate me more. Hey. Okay. The step of correct assumption may last a long time, as you must continue to learn, question, and analyze in order to refine your understanding of emptiness. Okay, so this is the stage where you are really thinking and analyzing. You have to learn. Then you have to think about it. Then you continue to analyze in your meditation. Okay? So after some time, you will gain the correct understanding of emptiness and have a correct inference, which irrefutably knows through valid reasoning that all persons and phenomena lack inherent existence. So it's a valid argument, yeah? So you have your syllogism with the subject, the predicate, and the reason. And the subject, or the predicate applies to the subject. And if it is the predicate, it must be also the reason. The reason conforms to the subject, it applies to the subject. And if it's the reason, it must necessarily apply or be the predicate. Yeah. And then they say if it's not the predicate, then it's also not the reason. That's the third one. Okay. But you have to really realize that so that it's in your bones, so to speak. Okay. So inference is a conceptual consciousness that realizes emptiness by means of a conceptual appearance of emptiness. This realization, which may occur before or after entering a path, so whether you're following the hearer vehicle, solitary realizer vehicle, or universal vehicle, the Mahayana, that realization may come before you even attain the first path, the path of seeing. Yeah, but it doesn't always. Not everybody has that conceptual realization before the path of did I say seeing? I meant a path of accumulation. Yeah, you have it before the path of accumulation. You guys should flag me down when I say the wrong thing. Okay. So this realization, which may occur before or after entering a path, has a powerful effect on the mind. It shakes how you view the world because you understand that the world and the sentient beings in it don't exist the way they appear to. Whoa! But I'm sure that my senses are telling me the truth. Okay, this doesn't mean that things don't exist at all. It means the way we think they exist is not how they exist. Okay, so I like to give the example, because I think these simple examples make sense to us. If you were born with sunglasses on, okay, you come out of the womb, you're wearing sunglasses. Everything appears to you darker than it actually is. You've never had any experience of things appearing not dark with regular natural light. They always appear dark. Okay? So you've never had any experience. If somebody tells you, that things aren't dark, that the way you're perceiving is the wrong color, that they don't exist that way, you'd say, phooey, No, I know how they exist. My eyes tell me. Okay? But, if you can start questioning and go to doubt, and then correct assumption, and then to the correct inference, yeah, then it's like, oh, yeah, I think that everything is this dark color, but, they aren't. And how do I know that? Well, maybe a person who makes sunglasses comes and testifies, raises their right hand and says, yeah, things are dark. You're wearing sunglasses. Things are, they appear dark to you. They aren't really that dark. So after some time, maybe you believe in that person. And then that's kind of like, wow, everything I say is not how it appears. Does that mean that other things don't exist at all? No, the dark things that I see don't exist. But things still exist. Okay, so if I'm seeing I have sunglasses that kind of make things a little bit yellowish, yeah? So if I look at a white flower, it appears yellow. Yeah? So yellow flowers don't exist. Or at least that flower isn't a yellow flower. But there is a flower there. You can't say that there's no object there whatsoever. Okay? So we're denying the ultimate existence, of inherent existence, but on a conventional level, there's a flower. Okay? So things don't exist like they appear to, but they do exist. Okay. Practitioners who have not already developed concentration at the level of serenity now put effort into that. Okay, so you have correct inference, but you've got to develop serenity so that you can focus your mind on that inference. Yeah. When cultivating serenity, their object of concentration can be any of the objects explained in the scriptures, and we've talked about that on Friday nights. After gaining serenity, they continue to meditate, alternating analytic and stabilizing meditation, now on emptiness. So analytic meditation is when you analyze and you explore and how do things really exist. Stabilizing meditation is serenity or concentration, where your mind remains stably on an object without going all over and without taking a nap. Okay? So you alternate analytic and stabilizing meditations on emptiness. As time goes on, emptiness becomes more and more familiar to your mind, to the point where, by engaging in just minimal analysis, the analysis itself leads to pliancy and serenity. So pliancy is a certain mental factor that we have to have serenity. Okay? It's a flexibility of mind. Okay? So then, after that, if you've gotten that far, then you meditate on emptiness with a mind that is a union of serenity and insight. Okay, serenity being the stabilizing or concentration part, insight being the analytic or, understanding part of it. Yeah. Okay, so that marks the beginning of the path of preparation, second path of the 5 paths. Through continual meditation, emptiness becomes clearer until eventually the conceptual appearance is worn away and you directly and non-conceptually perceive emptiness with the mental consciousness. At this point, then you enter the third path, the path of seeing. Yeah. So though a conceptual consciousness and a direct perceiver are very different, because the direct perceiver doesn't have the conceptual appearance, but the conceptual consciousness does. So they're very different. Yeah. Still, that conceptual consciousness, if you meditate on the object, with having done analysis more and more, and keep that with serenity, then that can break through to a non-conceptual understanding. Okay, so this is something that's quite important. We want the non-conceptual understanding, but you can't sit down and just say, okay, I'm going to banish all ideas and concepts from my mind, and that's the emptiness of inherent existence. Yeah, you can't just do that, because to realize the emptiness of inherent existence, you have to have some idea of what inherent existence would be like if it existed, and you have to see how your perceptions are clouded by this appearance of inherent existence, and how you believe that. Okay, so that's called recognizing the object to be negated. Yeah, what's to be negated? Inherent existence. Yeah, and inherent existence has never existed. So we're negating something that doesn't exist. Why do we need to negate something that doesn't exist? Because we believe it does exist. Okay? So here's our example of the boogeyman. Yeah, if you think, in Australia, do you have the boogeyman? Yeah, when you're a kid, there's some boogeyman who's hiding under your bed. Yeah. So you believe in the boogeyman. Yeah. You can't just, when you really believe in the boogeyman, even all the adults around you tell you the boogeyman doesn't exist. You don't believe it. You have to go, kneel down, look under that bed, and there is no boogeyman. But to realize there's no boogeyman, you have to recognize what idea of a boogeyman you had and how much you believe such a thing exists. Otherwise, if you say, I'm going to look under the bed and there's no boogeyman, but that doesn't mean anything, because you're not going in with the belief that the boogeyman's there and knowing what the boogeyman looks like. So you need evidence. Yeah? And you look yourself, and wow, all those years I believed in the boogeyman. Or all those years, we just had a senator in the US say that she was very happy that she didn't need to explain to people that the tooth fairy doesn't exist. This is after she said that everybody's going to die. That's a whole story. You don't need that. But, okay, the tooth fairy doesn't exist. And if you really believe the tooth fairy's there, yeah, okay, you get, because you always got money when you were a kid, whenever you lost a tooth. Yeah? And now you're 70 and a tooth falls out, and you put it under the pillow, and you're expecting, to find a treasury bill or something, Maybe one of Trump's meme coins, yeah? Yeah, you think that the tooth fairy is still existing, and now you lost a tooth, so you'll find some money, okay? So we have all these kinds of beliefs, don't we? Yeah, that we've never questioned. Yeah. And in this case, you wake up the next morning, your tooth is still there and there's no money, and you're mad. Yeah. But why are you mad? Because you had a wrong view. You had a wrong expectation. It's a silly example, but this is how we work, isn't it? We have all sorts of wrong views and silly expectations, and then we get mad when they don't happen. Yeah? I mean, somebody was supposed to be carpet cleaning the floors on the lower level of the Buddha hall this weekend. We even heard it with our own ears. And our problem was, we believed it. You didn't believe it. Yeah, by now we don't believe what the contractor says by now. Yeah. But you hope. You hope maybe this time. But no such luck. Okay. So it appears silly, but really, if you look closely, so many of our disappointments, our upsetness with other people, all this comes because of all these erroneous conceptions. Yeah. Okay. But here, the point is here, the last part His Holiness was saying, is that we can't begin with the direct perception, and we shouldn't just negate conceptual understanding, saying, well, it's only a conceptual understanding, because that is a step in gaining the right view. Yeah. Okay. Now the process of eliminating the afflictions begins, starting with the acquired afflictions, which are eliminated at the beginning of the path of seeing. Acquired afflictions are those that we learned in this life from false philosophies or false psychologies. Yeah? So maybe you were brought up believing that there's a soul, or you were brought up believing that there's a creator God, or you were brought up believing that because your ancestors were attacked by some other people, that therefore now, 500 years later, you have to hate the other people because their ancestors attacked yours. Ridiculous conceptions. Yeah? But these are acquired afflictions. And if we look, so much of our suffering, yeah, Putin, for example, yeah, dear Vlad says Ukraine is part of Russia. And it's always been part of Russia, he says. Okay? And therefore, for that reason, all we are doing is claiming our own territory. We are not invading another country. But we're claiming our territory, and the people who are there, there's some Nazis there, and we're freeing them of the Nazis. Yeah? And this is, a conceptual belief that he believes. Yeah? Why? He can point to certain historical things if he only goes back 100 or 200 years at most, because before that, yeah, Odessa was not part of Russia, for example. But, so he has his arguments, and starts war. Yeah? Because of a belief. And not only does he believe that Ukraine is part of Russia, but he also believes that it is his duty to, as the president of Russia, to restore Russia to the former glory of the Russian Empire. And how do you do that? You have to reclaim the territory that belonged to the greater Russian Empire, before the revolution. And, it came to be kind of part of Russia again, the Soviet republics, yeah. But after the Soviet Union fell apart, they all became their own country, and that's not right. Yeah. And this is a conceptual consciousness. It is a learned affliction. He didn't come into this life as a baby saying Ukraine belongs to Russia. He learned that. Yeah. So it is too, if we heard since we were little that there's a creator God, then that, idea might be in us kind of quite deeply because we learned it when we were little and we trusted the people who told us. And then we come to Buddhism and we find out, no, the universe was not created by a creator God. Yeah? And then there's this feeling of, oh, then who can I pray to that's going to fix all my problems? Yeah? Because you think that there's some external power that is omnipotent and can swoop in and fix your problems. Yeah? But then here you have to use reasoning and logic, okay? If there's a compassionate creator that can come in and solve your problems, then he should have done so already, because he's compassionate. Has he done that? No. Yeah. Is there anybody who is compassionate and can swoop in and save you and correct all your problems? No. Yeah, you can prove that to yourself using reasoning and logic. And so that leads you to the conclusion that a creator God does not exist. Yeah. So these kinds of things we have to really examine in our Buddhist practice. And this is why Dharmakirti in chapter 2 of the Pramanavartaka, he goes into all sorts of reasonings, yeah, that negate a creator, because it's something that many religions and philosophies in the world accept, yeah. But when you really investigate it, it doesn't make much sense. Mm-hmm. So if you spend your whole life praying to a creator that doesn't exist, it's kind of a waste of time, If you know about emptiness and spend your life learning how to negate your grasping at inherent existence, that can be beneficial. Okay, so you had a question? Okay, wait, use the mic.
You mentioned somebody who listed these arguments. You mentioned somebody who listed these arguments.
Yeah.
Who is he?
Oh, who makes that kind of argument?
Against the creator.
That there's a creator? Most religions. Yeah. Yeah, the Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism.
He's asking against the creator, but when he mentioned Dharmakirti.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. What was your question again?
The counter arguments.
Who makes the argument? Against what?
Counter argument against the creator.
Against, yeah, Dharmakirti.
Dharmakirti.
Kirti, yeah. Chapter 2. Yeah. Yeah. And, this is something that we we find, not just in Dharmakirti's text, in many texts, yeah, there's the refutation of a creator, because even in ancient India, people believed that, yeah. Brahma was the creator of the universe. Mhm. Okay. Okay. So you can, where were we? Okay. So the acquired afflictions are eliminated at the beginning of the path of seeing. Yeah. Through more familiarization with the view of emptiness on the fourth path, the path of meditation, then the innate afflictions are eradicated. So the innate afflictions are the ones that have come with us from previous lives. Okay? So, for example, anger is an innate affliction. Yeah. But anger at the politician we don't like is an acquired affliction. Yeah. But we can have that acquired one because the innate one is there. So the acquired one is easier to eliminate than the innate. Because the acquired we learned in this life, the innate, it's been with us beginninglessly. Mm-hmm. Okay. So on the path of meditation, the innate afflictions are eradicated. So those people following the Shravaka and solitary realizer vehicles, when they reach the fifth path, the path of no more learning of their particular vehicle, then all the afflictive obscurations have been uprooted completely from the mind. So the afflictive obscurations are like ignorance and all the afflictions and the seeds of the afflictions. Okay? But those following the bodhisattva path abandon, the path is slightly different because in addition to the 5 paths, yeah, you have the 10 grounds. Yeah. So the first ground is on the path of seeing, and the next 9 grounds are the path of meditation. So by the 8th bodhisattva path on the Mahayana path of meditation, the 8th of the 10, then all the afflictive obscurations have been abandoned. So just as the arhats who have followed the Shravaka and solitary realizer, their realization, the bodhisattvas get that same thing of having eliminated the afflictive obscurations at the 8th ground. But there still remains on the mind what are called the cognitive obscurations, which are the appearance of inherent existence, and the latencies, very subtle latencies of grasping at true existence. Yeah. So when somebody following the bodhisattva path has eliminated those, yeah, then they attain the Mahayana path of no more learning, in which not only the afflictive obscurations have been eliminated, but also the cognitive obscurations. And at that point, somebody has become a fully awakened Buddha. Okay? So the term, the realization of emptiness, yeah, it's confusing. What is a realization, okay? So it can actually refer to a range of mental states, yeah, from a correct inference of of the emptiness of inherent existence to a non-conceptual direct perceiver. So both of these mental consciousnesses are reliable cognizers. They see their object, in a non-mistaken way, in a non-erroneous way, yeah. and so that they know emptiness correctly. But one it has the veil of this corrective conceptual appearance, the other one doesn't. So realization does not occur suddenly in a flash to a completely unprepared person. Ah, shucks. I was really hoping that, I would just sit there and then I would perceive emptiness first meditation. 3 countless great eons I have to work. Okay, so the rare practitioners who experience sudden awakening, this is a term that has many different meanings according, in Chinese Buddhism it refers to one thing, in Tibetan it refers to something else. Okay, the term awakening, yeah. So the rare practitioners who experience sudden awakening have done considerable practice in many previous lives and left strong imprints on their mind streams for understanding emptiness. When these imprints ripen in this life, it may appear that their realization is sudden, but in fact it was cultivated gradually over many lifetimes. Yeah, because you need to accumulate a lot of merit, for this realization. And that's why we, keep good ethical conduct so we can accumulate merit and at least not destroy our merit by creating non-virtue. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so the term awakening itself, so that was just about realization of emptiness. The term awakening has different meanings according to various Buddhist traditions. So Zen masters explained to me, this is what His Holiness is saying, because in New York one year, he was invited to give a series of teachings in one of the big auditoriums. He was invited by Master Shenyan from Dharma Drum. And after His Holiness completed the teaching, then the two of them had a discussion that, in front of everybody, and this topic of what does awakening mean, okay? So Zen Master explained to me that in their tradition, awakening includes the first glimpse of emptiness, which is a conceptual realization. Yeah. Or just some kind of feeling of emptiness, yeah? Awakening is, for the Zen people, is neither a final attainment nor a stable realization. And when the person arises from meditation on emptiness, dualistic appearances and afflictions arise again, okay? A long time may pass before having another glimpse of emptiness. Only when their realization of emptiness is stable, direct, and non-conceptual do they begin the process of removing afflictions from the root. So all this confusion that sometimes happens between Zen and Tibetan, a lot of it comes because they define, the word awakening has different meanings to them. Yeah, so that's why it's always important to have a definition of a word and make sure you and whoever you're discussing it with have the same meaning for the word. Okay. In the Theravada tradition, awakening has 4 stages: stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, and arhatship. A practitioner becomes a stream enterer upon having the first direct perceiver of emptiness. So this is also a direct, perceiver of nirvana, they say. This introductory realization is deepened and integrated into their minds during the stages of once returner and non-returner, and finally become the stable and profound realization of an arhat who has eliminated all afflictive obscurations. In the Tibetan tradition, gaining the realization of emptiness does not mean one is awakened. Yeah? Awakening refers to having attained the path of no more learning of whichever vehicle one follows. Okay, so we do talk about the awakening in the Sravaka vehicle, the awakening in the solitary realizer vehicle. Those awakenings for those vehicles are arhatship. Yeah, usually because our tradition emphasizes attaining Buddhahood, yeah, then awakening, sometimes we say full awakening, complete awakening. Sometimes we just say awakening, but it's meaning the awakening of a Buddha. Okay, which has removed both obscurations. Okay, and with that, we are out of time. Okay. Maybe there's time for one or two questions. Anybody? Yeah.
I'm always very curious about what a reliable cognizer, not a reliable cognizer, what a, oh, Chinny, you're so tired. A range of mental states from correct inference. A correct inference
Yes.
has many steps, as you said, right? You can be doing that for a very long time, and it seems that there's levels of subtlety moving towards that correct inference. But then to say that both it's a reliable cognizer that knows emptiness correctly seems like a very strong awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it correctly knows emptiness through an inferential understanding. Yeah. And that's a very powerful cognizer, not as powerful as direct. Yeah, because the conceptual one, the inferential one, cannot cut the afflictions from their root.
Right, but what I'm asking about is the correct assumption that comes before that.
The correct assumption can just be, it's an assumption.
Right, that's why I'm asking.
It's not an inference.
That's why I'm asking here. It says that from correct inference to a non-conceptual direct perceiver, both of these are mental consciousnesses are reliable cognizers.
Yes. Yeah.
The correct inference is a reliable cognizer, is what it's saying.
Yes, it
Okay.
is. It's a reliable cognizer. It understands emptiness correctly. But it is not an assumption. An assumption is not a reliable cognizer. Okay. There's a difference between an assumption and an inference. Okay.
There's a question online, Ben will read it.
Okay. Can you read it loudly?
Ben, can someone put the mic on Ben to go ahead?
And Ben, please go ahead and read the question.
Oh,
Thank you, Venerable. We have a question online.
okay.
Should we recognize the work of some MOPs because we value the effort and worth of each person's actions? Should they expect to be valued on that basis?
Should we who?
Should we respect the value that someone who mops the floor?
Mops.
Mops.
Mops. Mops. Yeah. Yeah. Should we respect the value of somebody who mops the floor? By all means.
Do you want to repeat the question again, Ben, just the second part?
Sure, absolutely. The second part, should the person that mops the floor expect to be valued on that basis?
Because they mop the floor. I think it's safer never to expect to be valued. Yeah? For anything we do. I don't think the Buddha expects to be valued. Yeah? And some people value the Buddha and some people don't, but Buddha doesn't care. Yeah, because Buddha's not grasping at a self, and he doesn't think that he's so important. Yeah, but he is important. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's much safer if we don't expect to be valued. Yeah, but we don't expect to be, put down. But sometimes people put us down. Who puts us down? Not the Buddhas, sentient beings. Other sentient beings put us down, we put ourselves down. Yeah, this is illustrative of our ignorance. Yeah, so don't take it so seriously if somebody calls you a name or insults you. Yeah, it's only somebody else's thought. Yeah, are you going to care your whole life about other people's thoughts?
Or start a war.
Yeah, yeah.
Because of other people's thoughts.
Yeah, we start wars. Yeah, but the war. But are we going to care about their thought about us, about our reputation? Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's dedicate the merit and then continue to think about this topic a lot. Yeah?